didn't expect to see you here." To understand why those two words made my father drop his keys, you'd have to understand the 23 years that led to that moment. 23 years of him believing I was wasting my life. 23 years of me being too tired to correct him. Let me start over. I'm Johnny Odell, and I'm 43 years old. I'm a colonel in the United States Marine Corps, specializing in weapons systems assessment and procurement. I've spent 2 decades evaluating everything from small arms to missile defense systems, advising generals and defense contractors on capability gaps and technological solutions. I've testified before congressional committees. I've coordinated with NATO allies on interoperability standards. I hold 3 advanced degrees in engineering and strategic studies. My father thinks I work in supply logistics, filing paperwork, counting inventory. The kind of job, he's told me more than once, that anyone could do if they just showed up and followed instructions. He doesn't mean it cruelly, that's the worst part. He genuinely believes he's being protective, managing his expectations so he won't be disappointed when I inevitably fail to amount to anything significant. Because in his mind, I've already failed. I joined the military instead of going to business school like my brother. I never married, never gave him grandchildren, never bought a house he could brag about to his golf buddies. I'm the daughter who's still in the Marines the way some people are still living with their parents, a temporary situation that's gone on embarrassingly long. Tonight was supposed to be a simple family dinner. My brother Anne-Marie was visiting from Atlanta with his wife, and Dad had insisted I come over. It's been months, Johnny. Your brother wants to see you. I'd driven 3 hours from Quantico after finishing a 12-hour day reviewing assessment protocols for a new rifle procurement program. I was exhausted. I'm always exhausted these days, not from the work itself, but from the constant performance of being less than I am. From nodding politely when my father explains how real careers work. From smiling when my brother offers unsolicited advice on making yourself more marketable. But I came. Because that's what you do. You show up and you endure, and you hope that maybe this time will be different, even though you know it won't be. Dinner was at 6. By 7:30, we'd exhausted the safe topics: weather, traffic, Anne-Marie's kids, soccer tournaments. Dad's house was the same as always, a split level in the suburbs he'd bought after Mom died, decorated with furniture that was expensive, but not particularly comfortable. The den had become his sanctuary, wood-paneled walls hung with his own military memorabilia from Vietnam, a gun cabinet he'd inherited from his father, framed photos of him with various senators and business leaders from his post-military career in defense contracting. After dinner, Dad brought out his gun collection. This was a ritual I'd witnessed dozens of times. Him showing off the vintage firearms to anyone who'd feign interest, explaining the history of each piece with the enthusiasm of a curator giving a private tour. "This is a Winchester Model 1873, he said, handling a lever-action rifle with reverent care. "The gun that won the West. See the brass receiver? That's how you know it's authentic." Anne-Marie nodded dutifully. His wife Casey made appreciative noises. I stood near the doorway, half watching, mostly thinking about the assessment report I still needed to review tonight. Dad moved through the collection: a Colt single-action Army, a Springfield 1903, a Garand M1. He knew the history, the specs, the market value. He'd been collecting for 30 years, since before I was born. It was his pride and joy. This cabinet full of weapons that had never been fired under his ownership, that existed purely as objects to be admired and appraised. I'd learned everything I knew about firearms from books and training. Not from him, he'd never offered to teach me. When I was 16 and expressed interest in target shooting, he'd told me it wasn't appropriate for girls. When I'd enlisted in the Marines at 22, he'd asked if I understood that military service was different for women, and maybe I should consider the Air Force instead, because it was cleaner. Quote, Now here I was, 2 decades later, standing in his den while he explained the mechanical action of a Colt .45 to my brother, who'd never held a firearm in his life and had no particular interest in doing so. I stepped closer to look at the collection. Not because I was particularly interested. I'd assessed thousands of weapon systems in my career, including antique firearms for museum authentication, but because standing still made me feel invisible, and I was tired of feeling invisible. Dad saw me approaching and closed the cabinet door with a soft but definite click, the brass latch engaged with a small snap. "This isn't for you," he said, not unkindly, almost gently, the way you'd redirect a child reaching for something fragile. "These are worth serious money. You'd probably try to pawn them if something happened to me." The comment hung in the air. Anne-Marie shifted uncomfortably. Casey examined her fingernails. I didn't respond. What would I say? That I'd consulted on small arms procurement contracts worth hundreds of millions of dollars? That I'd personally authenticated weapons collections for the Smithsonian? That the idea of me needing to pawn his collection, worth maybe $50,000 if he was lucky, was so absurd it would be funny if it wasn't so crushingly sad? Dad locked the cabinet and pocketed the key on his keychain, an old brass ring with too many keys, including ones to houses he no longer owned and cars he'd long since sold. He kept everything, just like he kept his outdated ideas about who I was and what I was capable of. "Coffee?" Dad asked, already moving toward the kitchen. The evening would continue like this. Polite conversation, careful avoidance of any topic that might reveal how little we actually knew each other, everyone pretending we were a functional family having a pleasant evening together. I'd been doing this for 23 years. Showing up, smiling, letting my father's assumptions go unchallenged, because challenging them would require explaining things I couldn't explain. Details that were classified, achievements that were documented in personnel files he'd never see. And I was so tired of it. But what choice did I have? Tell him the truth? Watch him not believe me? Or worse, believe me and then have to confront 23 years of dismissal and condescension? Some truths are too heavy to carry, so you just leave them in the cabinet with the other locked away things and hope no one asks to see them. We moved to the living room. Dad talked about his latest golf game. Anne-Marie talked about a promotion at work. He was VP of Marketing now, a title Dad repeated twice with obvious pride. Casey talked about their upcoming vacation to Tuscany. "What about you, Johnny?" Dad asked, the way you'd ask a child what they did at school today. "How's the military treating you?" "Fine." "Still doing the logistics thing?" "Still in weapons systems." Right. "Well, steady work is nothing to sneeze at. Not everyone can be management material." Anne-Marie caught my eye, and I saw something there. Sympathy, maybe, or embarrassment on my behalf. He knew Dad was being condescending. He'd known for years. But he never said anything, never defended me, because that would make family gatherings awkward, and it was easier to just let things continue as they always had. The doorbell rang at 8:45. Dad frowned. "Expecting someone, Anne-Marie?" "No." He got up to answer it. Through the living room doorway, I could see him opening the front door, could hear the deep voice on the other side, though I couldn't make out the words. "Bradley! This is unexpected. Come in. Bradley, General Bradley Nesmith, retired. I'd met him twice before at defense industry conferences, though he wouldn't remember me. I'd been a junior officer then, barely worth noticing, but I remembered him. 3-star general, former head of Marine Corps Systems Command, the man who'd overseen weapons acquisition for the entire Corps during the height of the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. He and my father had served together in Vietnam. They'd stayed in touch over the decades. Christmas cards, occasional phone calls, the kind of military brotherhood that survives time and distance. I heard them in the entryway, Dad taking General Nesmith's coat, the general apologizing for the unexpected visit. He was in town for a defense contractor meeting, had a few hours free, thought he'd stop by. They walked into the living room, Dad making introductions. "You remember my son Anne-Marie and his wife Casey," and then his eyes landed on me. I stood up out of politeness, prepared for the usual introduction, "And this is my daughter Johnny. She's in the Marines too, does logistics work." But General Nesmith's face lit up with recognition before Dad could speak. "Colonel," he crossed the room with his hand extended, genuine warmth in his expression. "Didn't expect to see you here. Small world." I shook his hand, my mind racing. This wasn't supposed to happen. He wasn't supposed to recognize me. I was out of uniform, off duty, just Johnny who works in supply logistics. Good to see you, General. Are you conducting the small arms assessment, or is this just a social visit? The question was innocent. Professional, the kind of thing one military professional asks another when you unexpectedly encounter them somewhere you wouldn't expect. But in my father's living room, it landed like artillery. Dad's keyring fell from his hand, hitting the hardwood floor with a jangling crash that seemed impossibly loud in the sudden quiet. Colonel? Dad's voice was strange, uncertain. He looked at me, then at General Nesmith, then back at me. Bradley? I think you're confused. This is my daughter Johnny. She's in the Marines, but she's not. She doesn't. General Nesmith's smile faltered as he realized he'd stepped into something. I apologize. I assumed you knew. Colonel Odell is one of our top weapons system specialists. She's been coordinating the Small Arms Modernization Assessment, comprehensive evaluation of current systems, and future requirements. It's one of the most important procurement projects the Corps has undertaken in decades. Dad was staring at me now. Really staring, like he was seeing me for the first time. Or maybe like he was trying to reconcile two completely incompatible versions of reality. Colonel? He repeated. Yes, sir, I said quietly, not to him, to General Nesmith. How long have you held that rank? 4 years. And before that? Lieutenant Colonel for 6. Major before that. The words felt heavy, reluctant. This wasn't how I'd wanted this conversation to go. I'd never wanted this conversation at all. Anna Marie had gone very still. Casey was looking between me and Dad with wide eyes. General Nesmith, realizing he'd detonated something, cleared his throat. I should clarify, when I say small arms assessment, I mean Colonel Odell is leading the evaluation team. She's the senior officer on the project. Reports directly to the Deputy Commandant for Combat Development. The silence that followed was excruciating. Dad bent down slowly, picked up his keys. The jangle seemed too loud. You never told me. You never asked what I actually did. You decided I worked in supply logistics, and I let you believe it. Why would you let me? He stopped, started again. You're a colonel. Yes. You lead major projects. Yes. You report to generals. Sometimes I brief them, sometimes they report to me. That came out sharper than I intended, but I was too tired to moderate my tone anymore. General Nesmith was backing toward the entryway. I should go. John, I'll call you later. Colonel, my apologies for the... It's fine, General. This was going to happen eventually. He left quickly, and I didn't blame him. The atmosphere in the living room was suffocating. Dad sat down heavily in his recliner. 23 years. 23 years, I agreed. You let me think. All this time. You wanted to think it. You needed to think it. Because accepting that I'd built a successful career meant accepting that you'd been wrong about me from the beginning. That's not fair. Isn't it? The exhaustion was overwhelming now, making me reckless. You told me tonight that I'd probably pawn your gun collection. You've spent 2 decades treating me like I'm one bad decision away from complete failure. Like I need your guidance and protection because I can't possibly manage my own life. I was trying to help. You were trying to feel important. You needed someone in this family to be struggling so you could be the wise father figure offering advice. And I was convenient. I couldn't talk about my work because most of it's classified, so you filled in the blanks with your own assumptions. Anne-Marie spoke up. Johnny, he didn't know. He didn't want to know. There's a difference. I looked at my brother. You knew, didn't you? Not the details, but you knew I wasn't just some low-level logistics clerk. He had the grace to look uncomfortable. I suspected. And you never said anything? It wasn't my place. No, it was just easier to let Dad treat me like the family disappointment. Easier to let him use me as the cautionary tale. Don't end up like your sister, son. She wasted her potential. I never said that, Dad protested. You didn't have to. It was in every piece of unsolicited advice, every time you explained how real careers work. Every time you talked about Anne-Marie's achievements, and then asked me how the military was, treating me like I was a victim of circumstances rather than someone making deliberate choices. The room was silent, except for the ticking of Dad's antique clock on the mantel, a gift from some long-ago military award ceremony before I was born, from a time when his service mattered more than his collection. "I should go," I said. "Johnny, wait," Dad stood up. "I need to understand this. You're really a colonel? You really lead major projects?" "I've been trying to earn your respect for 23 years, Dad. I did everything right, excelled in training, earned my degrees, built my career, served my country. And you spent that entire time assuming I was failing. So yes, I'm really a colonel. And no, I don't particularly care if you believe me now that someone else has confirmed it." I walked to the entryway, grabbed my coat. Dad followed me. "I didn't know. You have to understand, I didn't know." "You didn't ask. That's what you have to understand. You decided who I was, and you never bothered to check if you were right." I opened the front door. The night air was cold, clean. "Your gun collection," I said, turning back. "The Winchester 1873? You said it was worth serious money because of the brass receiver. But the standard 1873 had an iron receiver. Only the high-grade models had brass, and they weren't called 1873s. They were the 1866 Yellow Boy model. What you have is a reproduction, probably made in the 1950s, worth maybe $1,200, not the $15,000 you think. Just so you know." His face went pale. "I authenticated a similar piece for the Smithsonian last year, part of my job, the job you think involves counting boxes." I left him standing in the doorway, walked to my car, drove back to my apartment near Quantico. The 3-hour drive gave me plenty of time to think about what had just happened, what it meant, whether anything would actually change. My phone rang twice. Dad, both times. I didn't answer. It rang a third time at midnight. This time I picked up. "Johnny?" His voice was raw. "I'm sorry. I know. I don't know how to fix this." "I don't either." Silence. Then General Nesmith called. He told me some things. About your work. About who you are in the Corps. He said I should be proud. "You should have been proud 23 years ago. You should have asked questions instead of making assumptions. You should have trusted that I knew what I was doing." "I know. Do you? Or are you just sorry you got caught being wrong?" He didn't answer, which was answer enough. "I'm tired, Dad. I've been tired for years. Tired of performing mediocrity for your benefit. Tired of being small so you could feel big. I can't do it anymore. What do you want from me?" "Nothing. That's the thing. I don't want anything from you anymore. I stopped wanting your approval years ago." That wasn't entirely true, but it needed to be. Some truths you have to grow into. We hung up without resolution. Because some things can't be resolved. Not really. You can apologize and acknowledge and promise to do better, but you can't unknow someone, can't unbelieve the wrong things, can't give back the years spent being dismissed and diminished. 3 days later, General Nesmith called me at my office. "Colonel Odell, I owe you an apology." "It's fine, General." "It's not. I created an awkward situation. Your father called me, we had a long conversation, he's processing." "I imagine he is." For what it's worth, I told him, "You're one of the best officers I've never personally commanded. Your work on the modernization assessment is exceptional. The Corps' better because you're in it." "Thank you, sir." He asked me to ask you, and I'm not going to relay this exactly as he said it because it wasn't particularly articulate, but he wants to know if there's a way forward. Between you and him. I thought about that. About what a way forward would look like, about whether I had the energy for it. "Tell him I'll come to dinner next month, one dinner. And if he treats me like the daughter he actually has, instead of the one he invented, we'll see about another one after that." I'll tell him. 1 month later, I drove back to Dad's house. Anna-Marie wasn't there this time. It was just Dad and me, and the silence was uncomfortable but not hostile. He had done research, he'd read articles about weapons procurement, he'd looked up what a colonel actually does, what the career path looks like, what kind of responsibility it entails. He'd tried to educate himself about the daughter he'd spent decades misunderstanding. "I looked at the Winchester," he said over dinner. "You were right. It's a reproduction. I paid $15,000 for it 30 years ago. I've been wrong about its value for 3 decades. It happens. I've been wrong about a lot of things for a lot longer than that." I didn't argue. We talked about my work, the parts one could discuss. He asked questions, real questions, not rhetorical ones designed to prove his own expertise. He listened to the answers. He didn't offer advice. It wasn't comfortable. It wasn't a heartwarming reconciliation. But it was honest, and honesty was something we'd never had before. At the end of the evening, he took out his key ring, removed the brass key to the gun cabinet, handed it to me. "You should have this." "Dad, I don't want your collection." "That's not why I'm giving it to you. I'm giving it to you because you're the one who actually knows what these things are, who can appreciate them properly, who won't make the mistakes I made." I took the key, not because I wanted it, but because refusing it would have been cruel. "I'm sorry," he said, "for all of it, for every assumption, for every time I made you feel small." "I know. Is that enough?" "I don't know yet. Ask me in a year." We're 3 years past that night now. Dad and I have dinner once a month. We're learning to know each other, not as father and daughter caught in old patterns, but as two people trying to build something new from the ruins of something that never really worked. General Nesmith retired and now sits on several defense contractor boards. He and Dad play golf sometimes. I've joined them twice, and it's deeply strange to hear them talk about me like I'm a real person, someone whose work matters, whose expertise is valuable. Anne-Marie calls more often now. We're not close. Years of awkwardness don't disappear overnight, but we're trying. His kids are old enough now to ask about Aunt Johnny's job, and he doesn't deflect anymore. He tells them I work with weapons systems for the Marine Corps. He tells them it's important work. Dad's gun cabinet sits in my apartment now. He insisted I take it, said he didn't want it anymore. The Winchester 1873 reproduction is still there, still worth $1,200. Still a reminder of how easy it is to believe something is valuable when you've never bothered to examine it closely. I look at it sometimes and think about all the years I spent trying to earn respect from someone who decided I didn't deserve it. About how exhausting that performance was, how much energy I wasted being less than I was. I think about the key that fell from Dad's hand, the jangling crash that shattered 2 decades of carefully maintained illusions. Some revelations happen because you orchestrate them, some happen because you can't hide anymore. And some happen because a retired general walks into your father's living room and says your rank out loud, and suddenly all the careful pretending becomes impossible. I'm 43 years old, I'm a colonel in the United States Marine Corps, and I'm finally, slowly learning that being seen clearly is better than being seen kindly. Even when it hurts. Especially when it hurts. Because that's when you know it's real.